The night the patrol cars rolled up my driveway, their sirens echoing against the hills, I knew immediately who was behind it. Karen had been circling my ranch for weeks. Her oversized SUV parked at odd hours near my fence line, clipboard in hand, barking at neighbors like some self-appointed marshal. She had tried letters, threats, and even a hand-delivered fine claiming my barn violated community aesthetics, though my land was 3 miles outside her HOA's jurisdiction. I ignored her antics, but she didn't take being ignored lightly. When the officers stepped out and marched toward me, Karen emerged behind them, her face lit with triumph, her floral blouse glowing under the headlights like a gaudy badge of authority. "That's him," she shouted, pointing at me with a stubby finger. "This man is illegally occupying land under HOA oversight. He's refused compliance and must be removed immediately." The younger deputy looked uncertain, but the older one turned to me. "Sir, we've had a call about a trespasser. Do you have any documentation to prove ownership of this ranch?" Karen's smirk widened. She was counting on the assumption that most homeowners panic when uniforms show up, that I'd fumble through explanations or stutter in outrage. She didn't know who I was, or maybe she didn't care. What she didn't realize was that I had spent decades of my life dissecting lies and exposing fraud from the bench. I was a federal judge, retired but not forgotten, and I recognized manipulation the moment it opened its mouth. "Officers," I said calmly, "you've been misled. This is my ranch. My deed is recorded with the county. And if you'd like confirmation, I can have the registrar fax it over in minutes. But before we waste more taxpayer time, perhaps you should ask this woman what evidence she has for her claim." The deputies turned to Karen. She pulled a stack of HOA bylaws from her purse, waving them like scripture. "It's all here. Section 12. Paragraph 4. Any land adjoining Willow Ridge subdivision falls under the HOA's visual compliance codes. His barn, his fencing, even the paint on his porch, it all requires HOA approval. And he doesn't have it." The deputies flipped through the papers. Rules about mailbox colors, lawn heights, satellite dishes, but nothing resembling land ownership. I let them read for a moment before delivering the first strike. "Gentlemen, HOA bylaws are private agreements, not statutes. They bind members, not the world at large. I am not a member of her association, nor is my ranch within their platted subdivision. What she's attempting is fraud under the color of authority." Karen's cheeks flushed crimson. "Fraud? How dare you? I represent this community. I have the board's full backing." I tilted my head. "Then perhaps you should explain why your so-called board has been sending me notices with forged county seals. I forwarded copies to the district attorney last week." That broke the first crack in her armor. The deputies glanced at each other, their suspicion shifting. The neighbors gathering at the fence whispered loudly now, phones raised, recording everything. Karen stammered, "He's lying. He's twisting things. You can't trust him." It was then I decided to reveal the truth she dreaded most. I reached into my jacket and pulled out my retired judge's credential, the gold seal catching the cruiser's beam. "My name is Judge Matthew Callahan. For 30 years I've presided over federal cases, including HOA fraud. I know the law, ma'am, and I know when someone is abusing it. Tonight you didn't just waste police resources, you tried to weaponize them against a private citizen. That citizen just happens to be me." The younger deputy's jaw dropped. The older one gave a low whistle. Karen froze like a deer in headlights, her bravado dissolving into sputters. "Why, you're making this up. He can't be a judge, he lives on a ranch. Judges don't live in barns. The laughter from the crowd nearly drowned her out. A woman's voice cut through, sharp as a blade. Karen, you just tried to evict a federal judge from his own land. You're finished. Karen whipped around, searching for support. But even her board members who had slithered up behind her were silent, shifting uncomfortably, unwilling to stand beside her. That's when the twist came. A tall man in a suit, who had been watching quietly from the shadows, stepped forward. I recognized him instantly. Assistant U.S. Attorney Philip Green, a colleague I hadn't seen in years. Evening, Judge, he said with a respectful nod. I came because your complaint about forged documents landed on my desk. We've been investigating. MS. Karen here and her board are part of a larger scheme extortion through fraudulent HOA authority. What you just witnessed tonight is grounds for federal charges. The gasp from the crowd was audible. Karen stumbled backward, shaking her head violently. No. 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 This isn't happening. I was protecting the neighborhood. But her excuses fell flat against the weight of truth. Green lifted a folder, thick with evidence, and handed it to the deputies. You can add obstruction, false reporting, and attempted coercion to her list. Karen tried to lunge for the folder, but the deputies stepped in, hands firm on her arms. Her screams echoed into the night, every word dripping with desperation. You can't do this to me. I am the HOA. I run this neighborhood. But the world no longer listened to her shouts. Phones recorded her humiliation. Neighbors whispered their relief. And I stood silently, my hand on the wooden gate of my ranch, watching justice unravel exactly as it should. Karen's shrieks carried no power anymore. The deputies pulled her back as she thrashed, her blouse stained dark with sweat under the porch lights, her voice breaking into frantic sobs. The crowd at the fence didn't flinch. If anything, they leaned in closer, hungry to see the fall of the woman who had lorded over them with threats and fines for years. A man near the back shouted, "About time." And the rest erupted in claps and cheers that drowned out Karen's protests. For the first time in this neighborhood, the applause wasn't for fear, it was for freedom. Assistant U.S. Attorney Green's calm presence turned the scene from chaos into order. He spoke in that clipped, deliberate tone I remembered from the courtroom. Ma'am, you've crossed the line into federal territory. Forgery, extortion, abuse of authority, it's not just petty harassment anymore. You used false documents to intimidate, and you weaponized law enforcement. That makes this bigger than a neighborhood dispute. His words cut through the night like the toll of a gavel. Karen sagged against the deputies, her face contorted with disbelief. The board members, once her loyal foot soldiers, scattered like frightened birds. One woman stammered, We didn't know she forged anything. She said it was legal." Green didn't even look at them. "You'll have the chance to explain that in front of a grand jury." The murmurs from the neighbors grew louder. Phones held higher. They weren't just witnesses, they were recording a piece of history. The end of a tyrant. I looked at my daughter, standing just inside the gate with her phone clutched tightly, recording like the rest. Her eyes glowed with something I hadn't seen in weeks: relief. She mouthed one word at me: safe. That was when I knew this wasn't just about law, or property lines, or Karen's greed. It was about restoring peace to families who had been terrorized in their own homes. The deputies finally loaded Karen into the cruiser, her face pressed to the window, her screams muffled, but her rage visible in every twitch of her jaw. The vehicle rolled down the gravel road, taillights shrinking into the darkness until they vanished. A collective sigh swept the crowd, and suddenly neighbors were stepping forward, clapping me on the back, shaking my hand, thanking me for standing firm. I heard phrases like, "We thought she was unstoppable," and "She had us all living in fear," and "Thank God it's over." But it wasn't over. Not yet. The federal investigation moved fast. Within weeks, indictments were filed not only against Karen but against 2 developers who had been feeding her money to push families out of their homes. The scheme was ugly manufactured fines, fraudulent liens, threats of foreclosure, but now it was exposed to the sunlight. And sunlight is the one thing corruption cannot survive. In court, Karen wilted under the evidence. Emails where she bragged about making peasants bend. Recordings of her threatening seniors on fixed incomes. Bank transfers that traced HOA funds into her personal account. She tried every defense denial. Tears, blame, but every witness dismantled her story. When the verdict came, the jury didn't even look at her. Guilty on all counts. The sentencing was brutal. Years in prison, restitution payments, permanent ban from serving on any community board. The judge, my former colleague, delivered a statement that silenced the room. "You mistook control for leadership, coercion for community. You forgot that power without integrity collapses on itself. And now it has." Karen broke down in sobs, begging for mercy. But the only thing she got was the sound of the gavel sealing her fate. Back at Willow Ridge, the HOA dissolved under the weight of lawsuits. In its place, neighbors formed a volunteer association not to bully, but to help. We replaced Karen's letters of fines with newsletters about potlucks and garden projects. Instead of demanding dues for phantom repairs, the new group organized charity drives for families in need. The community that had lived in fear was alive again, buzzing with laughter and kindness. One warm evening, the same neighbors who once hid behind curtains gathered at my ranch. They brought food, guitars, and even painted a new wooden sign to hang at my gate. In bold, hand-painted letters, it read, "Justice lives here." My daughter helped lift it into place. And when we stepped back, the cheers that rose up were louder than any gavel, richer than any verdict I had ever delivered from the bench. I thought back to the night Karen stood there, screaming that she was the HOA, that she ran this neighborhood. She had believed fear gave her power. But fear only lasts until someone says no, until someone shines a light on the lie. That night, I realized it didn't take a robe or a bench to deliver justice. It only took courage. So I'll leave you with this. When someone abuses authority, when they twist rules into weapons and try to crush families under false power, what do you believe is the right answer? Do you stay silent and hope the storm passes? Or do you stand up and make it clear that justice will always win?